Well, let's now talk about the Omicron variant and what it means for the country. The new variant has affected more than 231 people in the country so far. That's the cases that we know of. And experts fear an Omicron-triggered third wave. Also, a Lancet study has found that AstraZeneca vaccine immunity wanes after 3 months. Remember, that is Covishield vaccine in India. And 3 studies have now found that the Omicron variant is milder than Delta. Well, to talk about all this, we're now joined by Dr. Yatin Mehta, Chairman, Medanta Institute of Critical Care, Dr. Ravindra Mehta, Chief of Pulmonology and Critical Care, Apollo Hospitals, Bangalore, and Dr. Vishal Rao, Member of Expert Committee, Covid Task Force. Thank you so much, doctors, for joining us. And Dr. Yatin Mehta, first to you, it seems more and more clear that we are going to see a surge in cases, by next year at some point, once Omicron takes grip and, we have community spread of Omicron. Is there any sort of solace or reassurance in the fact that, more and more studies seem to suggest that it's milder than Delta?
See, although WHO has still said that the evidence is not sufficient at the moment, but there are one Scottish and one English study have come out, which are not yet published, but they seem to indicate that severity is less, but transmissibility is about 5 times more. Also, the South Africa, the peak which happened, seems to be subsiding. Again, it means the same thing. The impression is that it is less severe, but more transmissible. And but the caveat is that even if it is less severe, once you are hospitalized, then the severity is the same as Delta or any other variant. So one should not be complacent. There is some, light at the end of the tunnel, that it may be less bad than the other variants, but we have to continue with what we have been doing and be prepared for the worst.
All right, Dr. Ravindra Mehta, what is your view? And, states have announced various measures in Bangalore. In fact, there are no big parties allowed for New Year's, and, those big events have to be cancelled. So states are doing what they can to, restrict or put off any sort of spread of this variant.
Right. So what's happening is that every state has their own advisory committees. We have a technical advisory committee here, which has looked at the writing on the wall. And I think 2-3 data points have come in. One is the experience with Delta. Everybody felt that we were caught napping. We've not moved fast enough. Secondly, the Omicron threat, which came as it's got more mutations than ever seen before, so which worried us. The tempering factor, it doesn't seem to be so bad, but that is also variable. Every second day, we're getting different information. So I think everyone's taking a right-sided stance, go full Monty on the precautions. Just hold everything, because this is the way it is. It is X today and 500X tomorrow. That has been the experience in the world. So it's very rational to do that from a logistic, government and healthcare point of view. Time will tell us what is there. Inwardly, we're a little more reassured that it doesn't look as bad, but we don't know the final word on this, and we're very, very worried with our past experiences.
No, absolutely. And given our absolute numbers, Dr. Vishal Rao, given the spread of Omicron in different parts of the world, there's been a clamor for booster doses of the vaccine. The WHO, yesterday you had their expert in Europe saying boost as the advice. Now you have the WHO head saying that, you can't boost your way out of the pandemic. You have to have a strategy and it has to be, aimed at the most vulnerable, the booster doses. But at the same time, priority should be to provide vaccine to countries that don't have them.
Sure. And I think that's a very valid debate today. And as we are in touch with many of the global experts from the WHO's team also, what seems to be echoing is, on one side, there is enough of compelling evidence both from the USA CDC as well as the UK NHS to show that a booster dose seems to be imminent if it's more than 6 months past your thing. In fact, some countries have done it post 3 months of your second dose. And there is enough of evidence to show that this will remind your immune system, your memory T cells to kind of prepare for the new variants to come. So there seems to be an obvious race between the vaccination and the new variants at this juncture. But at the same time, there are many countries of the world, like we were talking some time back to the Africa team, and there were countries that said that they've just hardly completed 3% of the vaccination. So at this juncture, when your entire ecosystem for the world the virus is a global village. You see a new variant can crop up from any part of the world, like Africa or any other place where the vaccination is very low. So the debate continues on 3 for me and none for you. So I think WHO is repeatedly requesting countries to look at understanding and putting a moratorium on third doses until each country completes 10% of the vaccination at least. And this would be important for us to kind of secure the entire globe completely. While the frontline workers definitely need to be prioritized for a third dose, considering the fact that there is enough of compelling evidence to show that a booster may be required.
No, especially after this Lancet study that talks about how Covishield wanes after 3 months, the immunity wanes, and all of you frontline workers, all the elderly people in the country have had their vaccinations early this year. So already immunity would be low in face of this new variant, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I think that's why it would be very crucial that we take, you look at the UK guidelines, the USA guidelines, the European guidelines, all the published studies. Israel was one of the first to publish its data in Lancet talking about it. So no matter if it's an mRNA or any other inactivated vaccines, overall consensus among immunologists globally, we work closely with the Emory Center and we've been discussing with their heads there and talking to them. All of them seem to be in consensus to say that no matter which type of vaccine, 6 months and your immune system will require a reminder to continue its preparation for the new variants.
Right. So, Dr. Yatin Mehta, your view on this, given what we do know and given that now it does seem inevitable that we are going to see a surge in cases, by next year is what many are saying, or what is your estimate on that? But at the same time, there needs to be a plan to give a booster dose to at least frontline workers and the elderly.
I 100% agree with that. There is absolutely no question. There is enough evidence that the immunity wanes after 6 months. There is enough evidence that the vaccine at the moment remains the best protection for us. And therefore, I think the advisory committees or whatever are being pretty cussed about it. I think there is no need to be stubborn. You have to be flexible. You look at the way the NEJ and Lancet papers and JAMA papers have been published in recent times. They have expedited their peer review process. Similarly, we have to be ready for the pandemic, and this is given that a booster will give you a certain degree of protection, immunity wanes. That is enough evidence for us to have a public health issue, and healthcare workers and immunocompromised elderly people must be given a booster dose.
Dr. Ravindra Mehta, what about children? So far there was a lot of talk in August, September saying that, by October perhaps we'll have vaccines for children, at least children who are more susceptible, who are immune compromised. But so far, it seems that everything has gone, silent on that front. We're also not hearing about new vaccines being introduced into our kitty. We don't have mRNA vaccines either.
So children is a big problem, and that is one of the reasons we're saying this epidemic or this pandemic will not end that fast, because there's always going to be some targets left over there. The good news is that children seem to have an immune system which is not actually going through the big onslaught of COVID despite getting infection, and all those fears initially which were talked about have not been so horrendous. The concerning part is that children cohort the most. They're going to be playing, they're going to need to go back to schools, they're basically a part of functions, gatherings, and then they go back to their homes and they perpetuate the cycle. Children vaccines have been a big push, but as all pediatric drug development, it is the slowest to happen. We have candidates in our country, but the candidates have not made it to the ground level. We have Zydus we're talking about for a long time, still not seen penetration. Covaxin theoretically out there, but practically difficult to implement. The only imprint of pediatric vaccines we have is mRNA, and so maybe it's time to think out of the box. Either expedite the local stuff so as to give assurance of safety and implementation, or get the mRNA somehow so that we can go one level higher. A lot of things need to move faster. I think we're going through COVID fatigue at all levels, global level, at a country level, at an individual level. There needs to be think tanks who continuously think of this so as to look far beyond towards how to take this wholesomely to an end and not just react to situations which are happening so often in COVID.
Right. Dr. Vishal Rao, are you hearing anything on this front? The Prime Minister is going to hold a review meeting today. Do you think, soon we're going to hear about more vaccines or vaccines for children?
Yeah, and I think this is going to be, like Dr. Ravindra Mehta emphasized, this is going to be an important priority. And considering the fact that I want to again take us back to some time back in December 2020, when we first picked up the Delta through genomic surveillance. And by March, if you look at Karnataka, it was at 0.5 positivity rate. By end of March, it was at 5% nearly positivity rate. And by end of April, it was at 25% positivity rate, going up to every day about 50,000 new cases. Now, if you look at studies and trends from South Africa and that what they have released, higher transmission, higher virulence, and greater amount of vaccine escape. The virulence part, the Lancet team and many global experts across have said that if we are today saying that Omicron is a mild variant, we need to use it more anecdotally than as an evidence-based reassurance. Because at a critical tipping point, how will Omicron behave is something very difficult right now to decipher. But till that time, it's very, very important not to kind of play the thing lightly. Earlier, WHO takes about a couple of months to call something variant of concern. It puts it under variant under investigation, variant of interest, and then VOC. On 26 November, within a span of couple of days, WHO has called this a variant of concern because of significant number of mutations in spike protein. So there is a time for us to revisit the debate and discussion on the vaccine, and more importantly, because the vaccines that have all been created are created using the first formula of the D614G viral strain.
Right.
So naturally, with the changing landscape of the vaccine, we need to be more prepared now.